Meghan's become a real nuisance around here. I've personally seen her drones drifting onto my property, constant, intrusive, and frankly unacceptable. Montecito officials have received multiple complaints from residents. It's clear she won't be staying much longer.
The paradise wasn't supposed to crack, but now, behind those immaculate hedges and billion-dollar views, something explosive is brewing, and every whisper points to one name: Meghan Markle. Montecito, the sanctuary of silence, the fortress of privacy, the playground of the untouchable elite, has always operated on one sacred rule: what happens here stays hidden. But insiders say that rule didn't just get bent, it got shattered. And the fallout? It's messy, it's personal, and it's turning neighbors into quiet enemies. Because this isn't just about gossip anymore. This is about a community that feels invaded. And at the center of it all stands a man who's finally had enough: Rob Lowe. For decades, Lowe has been part of Montecito's inner fabric. He knows the rules. He respects the boundaries. And according to sources, when he finally spoke, even quietly, it sent shockwaves through a community that prides itself on silence. Because what he described wasn't just annoying, it was unsettling. Drones, not one, not twice, but repeatedly. Hovering, watching, recording. Insiders claim Lowe allegedly witnessed sleek, high-end drones drifting over his private property, lingering above pools, hovering near family gatherings, capturing moments that were never meant to be seen. And when confronted, denials, silence, deflection. But here's where it gets darker. This wasn't just Lowe's story. Other residents, powerful, famous, deeply private individuals, started noticing the same thing. The same mechanical hum, the same eerie presence in the sky, the same feeling that someone was watching. And suddenly, Montecito didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. It felt like a stage. The irony? It's impossible to ignore. A couple who famously walked away from the UK, citing relentless media intrusion, Prince Harry and Meghan, now facing accusations that mirror the very nightmare they escaped. But insiders insist this isn't coincidence. This is a pattern. Ever since their arrival in 2020, whispers began quietly circulating. At first, it was curiosity, excitement, even admiration. The royal couple had arrived. Montecito welcomed them with open arms, expecting grace, charm, maybe even involvement in the community. Instead came distance. Security teams reportedly blocking roads. Neighbors turned away at gates. A silence so thick it felt deliberate. And slowly, admiration turned into confusion, then discomfort, then something much sharper: resentment. Because Montecito doesn't care who you are. Fame doesn't buy permission. And according to multiple insiders, Meghan's presence began to challenge that unspoken law. One story after another started surfacing. A drone hovering during a private barbecue caught by Lowe himself. A quiet gathering disrupted by something unseen above. Cameras uninvited, unannounced, capturing fragments of lives that were meant to remain private. And when residents tried to speak up, they were allegedly met with cold responses, or worse, legal threats, cease and desist letters, silence that felt like intimidation. One anonymous neighbor described it chillingly: it's like living under surveillance, but no one will admit it. And just like that, Montecito's golden calm began to fracture. Even voices that rarely speak began to echo the tension. Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, silent publicly, but insiders suggest the ripple effects reached even their gates. Because when privacy becomes uncertain in a place built on discretion, everyone notices. And then came the tipping point. A podcast, a subtle hint, a story without a name, but everyone knew exactly who it was about. Lowe, careful yet unmistakable, alluded to royal neighbors, and within hours, speculation exploded. Millions listening, millions connecting the dots. The silence that once protected Montecito, gone, now replaced with a global spotlight. And suddenly, what was once whispered behind gates was being dissected in public. But it didn't stop there. A petition quietly circulated but powerfully supported. Over 24 residents reportedly signing on. Complaints formally documented, allegations stacking up, drones, disturbances, violations, and now authorities involved. The Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, the Federal Aviation Administration, because drones aren't just a nuisance, they're regulated, controlled, restricted. And if insiders are to be believed, those rules may have been pushed, bent, or outright ignored. Reports suggest over a dozen incidents tied to the area. Flights over private airspace, cameras capturing without consent, a growing file of complaints that's no longer easy to dismiss as coincidence. And still, the question lingers like a shadow over every manicured lawn. Why? Some insiders believe it points to content, media ventures, a constant need to create, capture, control narratives. Because in a world where image is everything, privacy becomes collateral damage. But for Montecito, that's a line you don't cross. Because this isn't Hollywood. This is where Hollywood escapes. And now that escape feels compromised. Even local voices have begun speaking out more boldly. Richard Menears reportedly described Meghan as invisible within the community, detached, disengaged, distant. While Frank McGinty recalled being turned away at the gates, his simple gesture of welcome met with rejection. Small moments, but together they paint a much bigger picture. A divide, a disconnect, a growing sense that the Sussex estate isn't part of Montecito, it's separate from it. Even Katy Perry, through subtle hints, has alluded to an atmosphere that's shifted, not broken, but no longer what it used to be. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just drones, not just complaints, but a community that feels like it's losing something it once protected fiercely. It's peace. Because Montecito isn't just about wealth, it's about trust. And once that trust cracks, everything changes. Now, as investigations quietly unfold and tensions continue to rise, one question refuses to disappear. How did a dream escape turn into a neighborhood divided? And more importantly, is this just the beginning? The silence didn't return after the whispers, it shattered completely. Because once the complaints reached official desk, this wasn't just neighborly tension anymore, it became a case. And suddenly, Montecito wasn't just watching quietly, it was documenting, reporting, and escalating. Behind the scenes, insiders claim something critical shifted. What used to be brushed off as celebrity quirks started getting written down, filed, and investigated. Patterns were no longer rumors, they were evidence. And at the center of that growing storm, the same recurring image. Drones circling, lingering, recording. Residents began noticing details they had once ignored. The timing of flights, the angles, the way the devices seemed less like casual gadgets and more like calculated tools, not toys, machines. Professional grade, equipped with cameras capable of capturing every private detail from above. According to sources, some of these drones allegedly appeared during moments that felt too coincidental to dismiss. Private dinners, poolside gatherings, family events, moments when guards were down, when people felt safest. And that's what made it feel personal. One insider described it as a violation you can't see coming. Because unlike paparazzi at gates, drones don't knock, they hover, they observe. And by the time you notice them, it's already too late. This growing discomfort started uniting residents who rarely, if ever, unite. Because Montecito isn't just filled with celebrities, it's filled with people who protect their privacy like currency. People who've spent decades building walls between their public image and private lives. And suddenly, those walls felt transparent. Even those who initially defended Meghan Markle began reconsidering. Some argued that her past experiences with intrusive media could explain heightened security or unusual measures, but others pushed back hard. Because protecting yourself is one thing, invading others, that's something else entirely. And this is where the narrative began to fracture. Some insiders insisted the drones weren't directly operated by Meghan or her immediate team, but possibly contractors, security units, or third-party crews working on potential content. But in Montecito, that distinction didn't matter, because responsibility doesn't disappear just because it's delegated. If it originates from your estate, it traces back to you. And that belief is what fueled the next escalation. Formal complaints, not whispers, not casual mentions at gatherings. Official, documented grievances submitted to authorities, each one adding weight to a growing pile that could no longer be ignored. The involvement of the Federal Aviation Administration changed everything. Because drone usage isn't a gray area, it's regulated airspace. Strict rules, clear limits, stay below 400 feet. Avoid private property without permission. Maintain visual line of sight. Break those rules and it's not gossip anymore, it's a violation. Sources claim that by 2024 into 2025, multiple incidents, some say over a dozen, were flagged in connection to the area surrounding the Sussex estate. Enough to trigger concern. Enough to justify deeper investigation. And once authorities step in, things move differently, quietly. methodically, but decisively. Meanwhile, within the community, tensions were reaching something close to a breaking point. Meetings that once revolved around wildfire prevention or environmental issues began shifting tone, conversations turning sharper, names being mentioned more openly. The Sussex estate was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a topic, a problem, a dividing line, and perhaps most revealing of all, people who once stayed silent were starting to speak. Not loudly, not publicly, but enough. Enough for journalists like Richard Nightmares to amplify the sentiment. Enough for long-time residents to share stories that, when connected, formed a pattern too consistent to dismiss. Blocked access paths, bright security lights flooding neighboring homes at night, construction noise disrupting the calm rhythm of the area, events that seem to operate outside the usual courtesy expected in Montecito. Individually, these might seem minor, but together, they created friction. And friction in a place built on quiet harmony becomes something much bigger. Even incidents that sounded almost unbelievable started surfacing. One family allegedly receiving a cease and desist letter, not for anything extreme, but for complaining, for speaking up about something as simple as lighting. And that's when the tone changed from frustration to fear. Because when people feel like they can't even complain without consequences, the environment shifts. It stops being a neighborhood and starts feeling like territory. And that perception, it spreads fast. Even those who never directly experienced an issue began to feel uneasy, because if it could happen to one neighbor, it could happen to anyone. This is how communities fracture, not through one major event, but through dozens of smaller moments that quietly build distrust. And then comes the breaking narrative. Eviction, not confirmed, not finalized, but whispered, discussed, considered. Sources suggest that the accumulation of complaints combined with potential regulatory violations has pushed the situation into territory no one expected. The idea that a couple as globally recognized as Prince Harry and Meghan could face official action in their own American refuge, it sounds unthinkable. But then again, so did everything else. Because Montecito doesn't operate on celebrity hierarchy. It operates on respect. And when that respect is perceived to be broken, status doesn't protect you. If anything, it makes the fall louder. And that's the uncomfortable truth hanging over this entire situation. This isn't just about Meghan or Harry or even Rob Lowe. It's about what happens when two worlds collide. Royal visibility versus private discretion. Global attention versus local expectation. And somewhere in that collision, something snapped. For Rob Lowe, this was never about creating drama. Insiders insist his intention was simple: restore balance. Protect the environment he's been part of for decades. But by speaking, even indirectly, he became something else. A catalyst. Because once one voice breaks the silence, others follow. And now, the story isn't contained anymore. It's everywhere. Online debates raging, opinions splitting, supporters defending, critics dissecting, every detail magnified, every claim questioned, every denial scrutinized. And through it all, Montecito sits at the center, no longer just a peaceful escape, but a symbol of something much more complicated. A reminder that even the most protected places aren't immune to conflict. A warning that privacy, once compromised, is almost impossible to fully restore. And perhaps the most haunting question of all still lingers, unanswered, unresolved, echoing through every quiet street and behind every guarded gate. What happens next? Because if this situation escalates further, if investigations confirm violations, if tensions continue to rise, this could become more than just a neighborhood dispute. It could redefine how celebrity, privacy, and power coexist in places that were never meant to be public battlegrounds. And for Meghan and Harry, this isn't just another headline, it's a turning point, because Montecito was supposed to be the escape, the reset, the new beginning. But now, it might just be the place where everything finally caught up with them.